Lots to cover on this MLK holiday.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
The celebration of MLK is not a one-day thing like most important holidays. We'll talk about that in a second. Nice to have you aboard. Thank you very much for tuning in on this Monday evening. This terrible story that we learned about last week with the loss of life of a 9-year-old and the way she passed, which is just so horrifying. The subject of our conversation tonight, in the sense that DCYF now is under the light, and the Oversight Chairman here in the House of Representatives, Patricia Serpa, is my guest. Let's see what she plans on doing about this and other things for this new legislative session and next fiscal year. So we'll get to that momentarily. Of course, we can't start the show without a congratulations to Patriots Nation. It's just, my goodness. I mean, look, I know you guys are all pumped. I get that. But Kev, doesn't it at some point, weren't you almost hoping that, huh?
You know what my answer
is. Just, I mean, this is, you know, my director, Kevin, is as avid as any of you could be out there. I thought really Kansas City was gonna clip them. Although I have to tell you, this whole Twin River thing and the betting thing, so I actually placed a bet on the Patriots on a prop bet and gave the points rather than take the points, because the Patriots, do you believe it, were an underdog. Turned out the way it all worked out that I made some money on the Patriots. I will tell you, this experience of betting a game and watching a game changes everything, just like I thought it would, and I ain't gonna do much more of it because it's just not authentic. It just isn't. Anyway, congratulations to the Patriots. Now we have 2 weeks of your incessant, cocky Patricia. Slide back for a second. You and just sit back there. All we see are her hands. Where these two hands are flying across the screen. Just step back for a second. You're the magic of television. Anyway, you know what I mean. All right, let's get going here. The Mueller story is an interesting one as he steps up for the first time to ward off this BuzzFeed story that was really the conversation for the week. And let me just say this about this. The BuzzFeed story is probably not as far off as the reverse reaction to it once Mueller spoke would lead you to believe. I think there's this much space between what is true and what is not true. I'm sure the sources for BuzzFeed story are not in Mueller's office. Mueller has been tight-fisted about how to go about this whole thing and has earned everybody's respect for not leaking. This is probably Southern District of New York sources, all of whom have their interpretation about what the president may have said to Michael Cohen about what he should say to Congress about Russian investment by the Trump organization. I think everyone just needs to take a time out and let this thing proceed to the Mueller investigation. You'll probably see more common ground between that story than one would think this weekend. But I'll tell you, the pendulum does swing, right? Thursday, Friday, everyone's like, oh, if this is true, he's out of here. By Sunday, we were making fun of BuzzFeed. Somewhere between the two paradigms is probably where the reality is. Jack Reed spoke at the breakfast this morning with the Ministers' Alliance as they commemorate, once again, MLK Jr.'s holiday.
Dr. King left a great legacy, and among one of his greatest lessons was that we have a responsibility to produce the leaders of the next generation, those that will take up the work, his work, and carry it forward. And today, at this breakfast, we recognize that mission and our responsibility. I salute you for that. We have to all work to continue to ensure that opportunity is available to all in our schools, in our workplaces, throughout our country, in our economy, and in our democracy.
You know, some of the conversation we've had on the border and a very Latino focus to equity, right, leaves us in a place where Black America probably is trying to find its renewed necessary footing for arguments that they still have and legitimate ones at minimum, right? So just a thought on that. We still have a long way to go when it comes to equity across the board. All right, on headlines of the conversation here, this is just terrible. I mean, speaking about this thing it should be difficult for everybody. It certainly was for the director when she spoke at a press conference last week.
On January 3rd, a little girl died. Sorry. We want answers. We want to understand what happened. We want to understand how she and her 7 brothers and sisters came to be in this situation when they were receiving services from this department, and what happened in the last 6 months that we were not involved that led to these children living in the conditions that the police found them in when they responded to the home on January 3rd.
Yeah, that she became full of emotion, I think, is understandable. I'm sure that all of these professional social workers and managers of social work like this feel these things to their core. If they don't, then they shouldn't be in those jobs. Patricia Serpa is the Oversight Committee Chairman. Thank you for coming. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Dan.
The thing that drove me crazy about this at the beginning was the idea that Tristan Piccola held this press conference last week by herself. That the governor didn't sit with her. I don't think the governor needed to make the presentation and go over the play-by-play of this horrendous story. But I think, and I spoke at length about this on the radio last week, I don't think there's any more significant priority than standing up for, you know, a 9-year-old little girl who loses her life, to show that you are connected to the responsibility of DCYF, to just simply say, hey, I'm here, because showing up is important. The director will tell you what's going on here, but know that I have this as a priority. That day, and you'll see it in the news package in our next segment, I don't know where I am, what camera, the next package will show you that the same morning, the governor was getting hugs from 4- and 5-year-olds as she was selling her pre-K concept, meaning she had the time, but she chose not to be there. Do you find that to be significant?
Dan, I don't mean to be provocative, but I thought that the governor's comments about this child's death were rather glib. And I know the governor is a mother, so it had to hurt her as much as it obviously hurt Dr. Piccola, as much as it hurt me. It's not a good legacy for any administration, so maybe she was trying to create some distance between that incident and herself. I don't know what she was thinking. I don't know where she was during that press conference. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of work to be done, and I do like Dr. Piccola. I think she's sincere. I think she's well-meaning, but to be perfectly honest with you, I think she's in over her head. I think DCYF needs to be broken up into silos.
Well, that is provocative. So if that's going to be the conversation, let's give it its ample time. We'll come right back and talk about the Oversight Chairman's ideas. Stay with us. Well, the chairman of House Oversight has told us something, I think, which is very interesting. She suggests that DCYF be broken up into silos. We'll dig into that in a moment. To refresh you on this awful, awful story, here's Eyewitness News report from last week.
It's a tragedy. It's a horrible situation, and we need to get to the bottom of what happened.
An investigation underway following the death of 9-year-old Zanai. Police say the young girl, who had special needs, was found dead in a bathtub in her Warwick home. They say she was living in squalid conditions with 7 other children and their adoptive mother, Michelle Rothgeb, who now faces child cruelty charges.
I've met with Dr. Piccola twice since this happened, and I no doubt that will continue.
Rhode Island's child advocate Jennifer Griffith tells me her office is now investigating this case and will be compiling a report solely focused on this death. Griffith has created a specialized team to help.
I'll be adding a person who has experience with children with developmental disabilities, and I will also be adding someone who has an expansive knowledge of the special education systems, particularly in Rhode Island for public schools.
DCYF Director Dr. Trista Piccola says her department is also taking immediate actions, like putting stricter limits on the number of children placed in a single home.
There's been a lot of discussion about, why one woman had 8 children in her home. and I also support her decision to make sure if someone's seeking to place more than 5 children in a foster or kinship or pre-adoptive situation that they would need her express authorization.
The Office of the Child Advocate is a watchdog group for DCYF, but Griffith says they can't do this work alone, reminding the public if you see something, say something.
Everyone is a mandatory reporter, and it's helpful to call before, not after.
Well, that's general good advice, right? But the chairperson of House Oversight is here to discuss this case. You see the governor in that package. Again, she was at another event that morning and chose not to sit with the director of DCYF. I thought just doing that would show the kind of leadership and focus and connection to this tragedy that I think needs to be had from the gubernatorial position. You're suggesting that the current DCYF director is over her head because of her skill set, or because of the way the whole thing is arranged?
Absolutely not because of her skill set. In fact, I have confidence in her still, even though you might find that distasteful, because I have a world.
No, I don't find it distasteful. I'd like to know, like everybody, what happened that would cause her not to know that they approved a final adoption of this God rest her soul, poor little one, having not gotten to the second floor in their last inspection of the house, and I mean, she laid out a fact sheet that I thought was as transparent as she could. The one question I would have had for her that nobody asked her at the press conference was, did you go to the home afterwards? I mean, did you firsthand see what was going on here? I'm not sure. But you have confidence in her. I don't find that distasteful, but I do find curious your suggestion that DCYF needs to be broken up.
Well, let me backtrack for a minute.
Sure.
First of all, I have the world of confidence in Jennifer Griffith of the Office of Child Advocate.
Who reports to the governor.
Who reports to the governor and her staff. They tell the truth, be it good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. Jennifer will not paint a pretty picture if there isn't one to be painted.
One needs just to understand that she does not work for DCYF. She is the watchdog for DCYF.
Right, and she monitors children. She goes to court. She'll weigh in on a court case, whether a child should be returned to a family or not. She works independently, and it's her job, frankly, to tell the truth. How else do we protect our children unless we have an independent watchdog? Jennifer still tells me that she has confidence in Dr. Piccola because Jennifer has made some recommendations and Dr. Piccola has followed through. I have a meeting with Jennifer next week or the week after. She has some ideas as to how we can support DCYF. I have my own ideas, and if Jennifer watches this show, during my 2 years as chair of Oversight, I'm looking at the myriad of problems at the training school, the myriad of problems in these home-based child foster homes, the wealth of problems in group homes. We saw a group home being closed down and the contract being terminated because the kids were being transported for sex and drugs out of state. The group home worker who was responsible for that transport was arrested and imprisoned this summer or this fall, I believe. Then you look at all of the other things that DCYF is involved in. I really think it's too much for Dr. Piccola to be responsible for all of those silos. Certainly there can be interaction among the legal staff, certainly among the social workers, but I think we need at least one more, I hate to say administrator, but we do need one more administrator to help Dr. Piccola manage this load.
Well, so are you saying that she needs a staff hire, or there needs to be a redefinition of certain human conditions with a department dedicated to those? In other words, break up DCYF to narrow its focus and to build another bureaucracy?
Well, I don't think children are getting, and they are part of our bureaucracy, but they're a worthy component of our bureaucracy. So if Dr. Piccola can focus on just the placement of children in homes, in group homes, if someone else can just focus on maybe the training school and following up with state contracts, it would free Dr. Piccola up to use her time and talent, and she does have many talents.
Should the training school work under ACI?
I've thought about that
Again, the
too.
training school is a jail for young people, so don't You know, we put these fancy names on jails for those under 18 years of age. Truth is, it's a kid jail.
It is for minors.
Of course, their application, the way they go about business is different, but in part. But there's security issues there. Do you think it ought to be broken off?
Yeah, and I don't think she has time for those responsibilities, because I've said it before. State employees are not shy about calling me. Sometimes they call anonymously, sometimes not anonymously, and in spite of a new director there, I hear that things are not going that well at the training school either. So how many more disasters and how many more fingers are we going to put in the dike before we have more of these kinds of tragedies in different settings? So I'm very, very frustrated, number one, that the governor is proposing to, I think, reduce the DCYF budget by, I think the number I read was $5 million. I hope she had a conversation with Dr. Piccola as to how Dr. Piccola can run all of those silos that I mentioned with $5 million less. I don't know. It's beyond my imagination, and I'd like to know what Jennifer's thoughts on that are.
So your approach to this case, are you going to call this case before a House Oversight? What
we have to do is to wait for Jenna to complete her investigation. She will give us a complete investigation, and because hers is such a small staff, she has to assemble like a retired police detective, maybe someone with some special ed background, a child advocate, a school social worker. She's going to go through that little girl's pediatric records, the school records. Did the little girl receive services outside of the home? Were those services followed up on? So she has to assemble all of that information. They will digest it and then report back to us, and she'll make recommendations to Dr. Piccola. So to call Dr. Piccola in, say, for our first meeting, I don't think she'll be able to tell us much more than she's already said to the press. But she will come when Jennifer delivers that, and it's called a death panel report.
Great.
So I know when that gets posted, death panel report, we just hold our collective breaths. And I don't expect that it will be very pretty, but it will be honest.
All right, so to be clear, House Oversight and you as chair will summon the players when everyone's done their diligence in the job, because this is going to be a criminal case that's going to have to go through the courts at the same time. But will this story be a foundational motivation for you to eventually assemble a hearing on this? And does everything that you do in House Oversight necessitate a bill to come out of something? Can you just have an oversight discussion just to establish facts? Do you have that charge statutorily?
Well, statutorily, because of separation of powers, we can't tell the administration how to do their jobs. Jennifer can certainly make recommendations for policy. I can follow up, my committee can follow up to make sure that the policy is being implemented as recommended. If there weren't separation of powers, would I like to be at the Child Advocate's office every day to see what's going on? You bet I would, but I have a role, and my role is limited. And I was telling one of the people in the hallway while waiting for you during the campaign trail, on the campaign trail this summer, I had a constituent say to me, Pat, you've had meetings on UHIP for 2 years now, and it's still not fixed. I need for the public to understand that we personally cannot fix it. All I can do is to draw attention to it with the hopes that those who are responsible and get paid to fix it, fix it.
You have quite the bully pulpit, and you've exercised that over UHIP, no doubt. But you also can produce legislation that you think is required when necessary. Are you thinking about producing legislation that would break up DCYF? And if you did, clearly you would need to bring testimony in to start to figure out from experts what the wise thing to do is.
Right. I can't predict what I'm going to do yet. The session just started, as you know. I want to meet with Jennifer, see how she feels about my idea. Naturally, there will be an added expense. But, and I've said it publicly before, we're hiring all of these communications people, Dan. I don't know that we need many more communications people. We need some people in administration who can support those social workers.
Meaning too much payroll for communication staff rather than administrators.
Administrators who can really dig down and get in, and can get in to see the director. on a moment's notice, because I'm told that they have to make an appointment to see Dr. Piccola, and I'm not criticizing her. She's a busy woman with a lot of responsibility. I get that. So if we can lighten some of her load and let her narrow her focus, maybe that's what I'm trying to say, and let someone else with another skill set deal with the adolescents in the training school, and our group homes, I think for the most part, house adolescents with that skill set, deal with that. It's just a thought that I had, because clearly the way we're doing it is not working.
All right, we come back, a general look at the General Assembly. Stay with us.
The reason is because we're investing more in frontline workers, but less in out-of-state placement, group homes, and what they call congregate care, which is institutional placement. So the whole shift that my administration is doing is, you know, when I started as governor, Rhode Island had the highest number of kids, percentage-wise, in out-of-state placements and in institutional settings. And that's not good for kids, and it's incredibly expensive. So actually, in my budgets, we've put more money into foster care. We're paying foster care parents more to take in kids. We have more kids than ever in foster care. We have more caseworkers. We're putting more into frontline and less into the really expensive stuff.
That's the governor's take on newsmakers this past weekend on her reformatting of DCYF to the extent that she's done it. One more time, not good enough for you?
Well, it doesn't square with the $5 million takeaway. And I do know that...
Meaning in her budget, she proposed...
last week, the week before. Yeah. So...
$5 less million for DCYF?
For DCYF. I think that was the number that I saw. And I know that Dr. Piccola and Jennifer Griffith, to their credit, are doing these community meetings where, in Providence, in Central Falls, where we have the highest incidence of children who do need foster homes. They're actually doing meetings in high schools, meeting at churches. They're trying to recruit a better quality foster parent. In fact, they've set up what they call one-stop shopping, because if you wanted to, or I wanted to be a foster parent, I would have to have my home, I'd have to have BCI, I'd have to have a health check. So I think it was the Rhode Island Foundation who funded the first initiative that they embarked upon last year to make it one-stop shopping, so that you could have your health check, your BCI, set up an appointment for someone to come out and look at the safety of your home, see if you had a fire alarm, a smoke alarm. So I give them credit for that. And I do believe, because of the experiences we have, that these kids don't fare well in the group homes. Mm-hmm. We saw evidence of that recently. But there are other kids in other group homes that I don't know how they're faring, so that's why I think we need someone to pay attention to that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see your role. We don't have that much time to forecast the General Assembly's overall charge for this calendar year. But you're going to have your hands full. This particular story, and if you start tackling DCYF, you're going to have your hands full. You're going to be pretty focused on this.
I'm up for it.
Yeah, it seems to be your major priority.
I would say so. Kids are my major priority. Kids, old people, and animals, in that order.
Kids, old people, and animals.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll keep tabs on all three. Thank you for coming in and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Dan, for having me.
Patricia Serpa, Oversight Chairperson. We'll be right back with a final word. All right, so we may lighten up tomorrow and see if we can dig into this Patriots victory and what to expect for 2 weeks. But who knows what the cold weather brings. Let's just try to warm our brains. We'll see you tomorrow and on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Good night.